What's up, everybody? It's Wednesday, November 3rd. We're almost out of year here, folks. It's time for The Wire. We're going to talk a little bit of NBA. Richie, thank you for taking over last week. I saw that we were neglecting the NBA and they kicked off the season. So we're going to talk about the Knicks. We're going to talk about how Carmelo Anthony is doing over there in LA and a little bit more about the Lakers. We're going to talk about the Nets, of course. We're going to get into the NFL, big changes in Tennessee, and something that Richie teed up last week, and so much more. The Wire is starting right now.
I'm going in, it's first and 10. I'm a legend boy, a champion. They can't match the flows, the X's and O's. I'm breaking the code, devastation about to unfold. They calling me Derek by the way I roll. Bet you never ever seen a pro this cold. I float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I mix with Iron Mike and the great Ali. I'm a running back, believe me, baby. I fathered the game, call me Daddy Brady. I'm like that, try be like this. Sammy Sosa, that boy don't miss. It's the return of the greatest. Any way you name it, I'm everybody's favorite. I'm bringing the pain and bringing the fire. Hey, stay tuned, it's going down to the wire.
All right, fellas, I'm back. I'm here. My voice isn't quite back, but I'm here. I'm excited. What's going on, guys? How you been?
I'm all right. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. Doing real good.
I'm tired, man. I had a long weekend. Ready to go.
Awesome. Well, awesome show, guys, last week. I enjoyed it very much. Let's dive into today. We're going to start things off with the NBA. So the New York Knicks, they have come out pretty hot into the 21-22 season. I'd say they're off to a good start. They're 5-1, and currently, at least what I saw today when we were recording, they're seated at the top of the Eastern Conference. They've got wins over Orlando, Philadelphia, Chicago, Boston, and New Orleans, and I think their one loss was also to Orlando. This is their second best start in 20 years, and 4 out of their 5 starters are averaging 15 points plus a game. Now, last year, I know that they exceeded the expectations that we set for them here on The Wire. And I know it's pretty early on, so I don't want to get into playoff picture and all that, because we know we made this mistake last year talking playoffs way too early. So what I'm looking for is your overall opinion of the Knicks thus far, and if you think that they're capable of sustaining the current momentum that they have going for themselves. Why don't we start off with Sahe? You're at the top left of my screen, man.
Yeah, the Knicks are playing fantastic, right? But it's early in the season, so we're going to see. That's what you can say. When you don't know too much about what's going on, you're just like, it's early in the season. Either they're doing good or they're doing bad. But you saying that that's their second best start in 20 years?
I think it was the 12-13 season that they did a slightly better 6-0 start.
Okay. Yeah, so that's like throws up the red flag, like, yo, there might be something here to this. They did good in the playoffs. They got some nice young talent in there, so it's good to see that it's blossoming. So, I mean, it can't be bad for the Knicks, you know? It's a positive sign, something Knicks fans have been wanting to see for a long time. So, do I think they can keep the momentum? They're young. So, yeah. They're young, so the youth and inexperience, they're going to want it, you know? So, yeah, I think they're going to blaze right through the Eastern Conference, at least to another 3rd, 4th seed.
We'll get into a team that's significantly further down that list. I think the 8th spot right now, a little bit later. But Richie, the Knicks are looking pretty good right now. I mean, I know you, and I know it's way too early to say the word dominant, but they are doing well. Do you think this is something that's sustainable?
Sustainable depends on your definition, as Sahe said. I think they're a young team, which you clarified, and that means they're pretty high energy. The thing that's really helped is they're playing Kemba Walker split with Derrick Rose. So like Kemba, like Derrick's not playing too often. And that's so far been very effective because he's almost averaging 18 points per game. So a dude coming, to see Derrick Rose like back in his like career is great. obviously. And then, giving Kemba a little bit less of a split is working. Long term, Kemba Walker was 3 years removed from MVP conversations when he was in Charlotte. But having said that, right now their youth and their energy is what's winning them games. Now this is the beginning of the season, and they kind of go hand in hand, and they're out rebounding everybody they're playing. Will that sustain? I mean, it's really, really, really hard to say. And who they're in, the conference they're in, and who they're playing with the Atlantic, it's going to be tough. You already alluded to the 8th seed currently in the East, and we'll get to that. But needless to say, they're in the Atlantic as well. I believe they have the talent to make, once again, the top 8. I think Sahe saying 3 or 4 is very possible. I'm going to predict 4 right now because I think Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Brooklyn will all definitely be better than them. Atlanta is a fantastic team, but they're definitely right at that cusp of where they need to be. RJ Barrett's starting to really improve, and I think this is a team in 2 to 3 years that can really, really start pushing. But can they sustain it? I guess the quick answer is yes. I believe they'll be top 4. So I don't believe they're going to be the best team in the league, but I think top 4.
Yeah, and Trey, this is right before you joined us, I think, when we were talking about the Knicks last year. It was a lot of the conversation of they've done well to get themselves where they were. We didn't think past getting into the playoffs there was much more of a story to tell, and it turns out there was a little bit more than we predicted. With this start, do you think this is the start of something hot in New York for the Knicks? Oh, you're on mute.
I think we're being a little bit too surprised. They were a playoff team. Let's remember that. The start that they have is great. I think it's way too early to tell about anything right now. Yeah, I'm mentioning the AC right now. Teams are still trying to figure themselves out. There's still a lot of chemistry, and it's 2 weeks into the season. We still have players coming off injury. We'll see. Like I said, they were a playoff team. I would expect nothing less than for them to make it to the playoffs again. After having to face the playoffs, after being cement for so many years, I expected them to come out with a little gusto. And like you guys mentioned, they are a young team, so they have the legs and they can run. With the leadership of Derrick Rose and Kemba Walker, they seem to have a nice mix. They seem to have a nice mix of veteran presence and youth. Their biggest thing is going to be consistency, and we'll see how that goes throughout the year. But they did make the playoffs last year, so I'm looking to build onto them.
Awesome. All right, well, let's scoot on over to the West Coast, and I'm gonna try something different with the leadoff rotation here, and I think it's gonna work out nice. Carmelo Anthony has come off the bench and put up 20 plus points in the past 2 games, leading up to today's broadcast anyway. He told the press that he is highly adaptable, and this is what NBA fans should come to expect from him, or should have already come to expect from him. Definitely paraphrasing, don't take that as a quote. But it was a really calm and cool and well-dressed interview, if you want to check it out. So far, the man's averaging 16.7 points per game. His field goal percentage is the best it's ever been at 50%. The same can be said for the 3-point range. It's sitting at 52%. And we've also seen him playing a lot more defense than we're used to seeing out of Carmelo Anthony. Now, keep in mind, once again, we are right into the season here, but we talked a bit about how stacked the Lakers are and how it can be difficult to present a cohesive front when it comes to using this many pieces. I'd like to know, first off, we're going to start with you, Richie, your overall take on the Lakers gameplay thus far with all these moving pieces. And specifically, I'm interested as to what Carmelo Anthony's performance says to you about it.
This is a little challenging. Like, I want to be respectful to Carmelo Anthony, but it's really hard right now. I'll say this. I'm happy for Carmelo that he's like in a rhythm. And, like, when you're at, you're a competitor like he is, right? Honestly, one of the greatest scorers in the NBA of all time. You got to have that confidence. I don't agree with his statement of, plug me in, I'll make anything happen, because for years that was what the argument against him was that he needed to be a starter, and he had a huge ego and etc. I think Portland was really helpful in like turning around the optics of Carmelo Anthony, because that's when he started playing off the bench in Portland and succeeding. So I'm happy for him that he's doing well in LA. He's finally playing with LeBron. He was supposed to be one of the original big three in the Heatles. So, that's coming together for them. In terms of the Lakers play overall, it's still really early. It's hard to really discuss these things because it's like, Russell Westbrook had some really terrible games and he's turning the ball over 10, 12 times. And then now he has a great game. And then LeBron's misses a game. And, when LeBron's not there, Russell's going to carry them effectively in that sense. But what I'm curious to see is when LeBron and Russ and all of them are together and them getting the opportunity to gel. Now, you got, we said this before, you got Russell Westbrook, you got LeBron James. They're two similar players, both not exactly good from the 3-point line. Russell's significantly worse than LeBron in that sense. And they have similar game plans. Now, I'll say this, Russell's more like how LeBron used to be when he was younger, where he's just dive into dunk. And he's going to give you 110%. Like I think the disrespect he's getting lately is kind of crazy. He's not playing his best, but it's like you can tell it's jitters. You can tell it's like the lack of cohesion. And honestly, it's like the comparisons to Hield, like one who went to Sacramento, because he could have been the piece instead. So you got all these things going on. It's really early. They're not exactly the best stylistically together, but like anything, we need to wait 40 plus games before we judge that unit, because it's a big like Russ and LeBron are so have the same attack that you don't have the spacing you need. So who's to say they don't make some moves for some role players towards the middle of the season? So the final product is not here. The Lakers are obviously working on that and working to see where they're at. But, right now, I think the biggest problem is they're not boxing out effectively. Anthony Davis is bottom 6 in the NBA in boxing out. And that's really unacceptable when you consider the role he needs to be playing for the team. And they're getting out rebounded. And I think that's the bigger issue, is that effort in the boxing out portion of things. Because everything else will come in, the talent is the talent. Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and if Carmelo plays like this consistently, long term, man, they're gonna be a tough team. But right now, I would say the big thing they need to work on is boxing out and not getting out rebounded, because right now they're playing terrible in that sense. So that's where they need to improve.
Absolutely. Let's slide over to Trey. And I know we've had this discussion before. Feel free to weigh in on it as a part of your take. But, we've asked the question, is a win at the beginning part in this early stretch of the season the same as a win as we're, looking towards the playoffs towards the end of the season? But overall, what's your take on the Lakers and Melo coming off the bench with those pretty stellar performances?
The Lakers I only have 3 people from last year coming over to this year. So this team is going to take a while to build. And they got to figure themselves out. And they've only been in preseason together less than a month. So coming less than a month into their first season, these first 20 games are just extended practices for them at this point, because they need to figure out rotation. And they need to figure out the stylistics of Russell Westbrook matched with LeBron James, and when to bring in Rondo. And we have Trevor Ariza, and we have players hurt. THT, who's the shooter? My guy from Carolina. I can't remember his name. 3-point shooter. We have people hurt. We haven't gelled. We haven't played as a team. Melo's at 50-50 right now. I don't think he's going to be 52% from 3, 50% from the field. I think that he's going to wind up being really close to 40, 50, 90. I don't think we can expect 50% from the 3 all year, but if we're getting it, we're getting it. Melo's a bucket kid. That's what he does. He's a professional bucket kid. I think he's 9th all time in scoring right now. So he's going to score. And from what we needed 3-point shooting. which he can bring, and we needed scoring outside of LeBron James, especially for those moments when they have to get rest. LeBron is going on 37 this year. Him and Tom Brady are freaks of nature, but at the same time, he's still turning 37 this year. So that little rundown dunk that he did, he's only got a few of those left in the tank. He's not running down after all these balls. You know what I mean? So they needed the scoring. They needed the basketball. Carmelo has tremendous basketball. I think that those months of him sitting on the bench or not being in the league and getting that call and Portland bringing, I think they humbled him tremendously. He doesn't mind coming in. I mean, just like Nick Van Exel did off of that Mavericks team. I mean, he came off the bench averaging 30. It's not about when he's in the game. It's about where he is in the game. He's going to be on the game in the fourth quarter because he can score. He's going to get 30 minutes a night if he wants, as long as he's being productive. And the fact that he's coming in playing defense, that's a plus. Melo, back in the day, could play defense. And he fell off of it because he didn't take on a lot of the offense. Now he's back to playing defense because he's a sixth man or he's an offensive player, which is needed. They'll figure the rebounding out. They got Dwight Howard and they have Anthony Davis. They'll figure that out. They just need to learn each other and how they play. I think that's it. I'm not panicked about the Lakers.
Absolutely. Sahe, we know you're a Lakers fan as well. What do you make of Melo? I know there's a lot has been said. What do you make of the early impression of the Lakers?
Man, I don't know what to think of the Lakers, man. Like, the first they come out and lose to the Warriors, and I'm like, okay, Steph Curry's good, all right. And then who they lose to next? Who was the second game? I forget who it was. I know they lost. And then they blew a 26-point lead.
The Thunder.
It was okay.
Blew a 26-point lead. Come on, man. But at the same time, it is early, like we were saying earlier, for the Knicks. It's early in the season, so you can't tell. I just can't wait for the playoff time, because that's when LeBron really going to show up. The thing about it is are they going to be able to stay healthy enough through the regular season to be at full strength during the playoff time, something they failed to do last year. And the Phoenix Suns just wiped them out. You know, they weren't healthy. Everybody was hurt here, hurt there. So that's just the key. Get everybody to the finish line is what the Lakers have to do, because they don't need to be regular season champs. That doesn't mean anything to LeBron. The light, when the spotlight is shining really on LeBron, is playoff time. Because that's what everybody talks about, you know what I'm saying? It's either, you know what I'm saying, Jordan went to 6 finals and won all 6, you know what I'm saying? And LeBron went to all of them, but he loses some of them. So he's got to get those rings, man, to get people off his back a little bit. And I think that's what they're going to try to do this year, and it's going to be tough because they got a lot of old guys out there. So it's, if anybody can figure it out though in the world of basketball, it's LeBron James, right? He's got all those veterans out there. He's going to be able to figure out, is what we hope. That's why they brought him in there. This is why they're paying him that much money. They're going to be all right.
All right. I got a segue. I haven't got to do this in a while. Speaking of old guys out there making it work. I'm going to get to the team and into the story, but I have to say, did you guys get a chance to see Blake Griffin's pull up to pass, mid-air turn shot? That was pretty impressive. You get a chance to check it out. So before we head to the break, I want to talk about the Brooklyn Nets, specifically their game that happened on Sunday against Detroit. Now, there's 2 really big factors that I'm going to focus on. Feel free to elaborate in any direction you want. They beat the Pistons 117-91. The first factor that stood out is James Harden pretty much flipped some sort of switch this past 2 games. He started out the first 5 games. He was looking rough, to say the least. Now he's up to about 23.5 points per game average. And quite frankly, he's playing a little more aggressive on the inside, which I know I've heard, I think Richie or other podcast members say before, he needs to be James Harden. what my first question, and then we'll get to the second point, and we're going to lead off with Trey. What do you attribute the change in James Harden's gameplay and overall attitude to? Some examples could be the situation with Kyrie, emotions, the press finally getting to him, because it's not just us that have said James Harden needs to play more aggressive. It's everybody.
I don't think Kyrie's situation has anything to do with James Harden's play whatsoever. We just not really just found out, but James Harden spent all summer rehabbing, so he hasn't really trained. So he's out of shape. He's out of basketball shape. The new rules changes as far as like getting we're getting fouls. I think that plays into the rhythm of his game, because his game was predicated around manipulating that rule in sport. So he's going to have to figure that out. But James Harden is a tremendous scorer without the foul. And as long as he's getting into a rhythm and he's starting to get healthier as the season goes along, he's going to be James Harden. He can still do the most ridiculous. I still can't define his offense. It's just different. And he's still going to be that different player that's going to be very effective on the offensive end. It's early in the season. He just had to figure out he's got to get in shape. These first 20 games, they've only been at training camp for less than a month. They had a couple of preseason games, and then they started the season. And they're just reeling back from last year when they had 72. They're about to jump into 82. He's probably going to be out throughout the season, to be honest with you. And that's to be expected. Him and KD. They'll figure the Kyrie thing out, but I don't think that had anything to do with his gameplay. I think that him rehabbing all summer and just starting to get back into basketball shape had everything to do with his game, and he started to adjust his game to non-calls that they're making.
Awesome. Sahe, what do you think contributes to this it seems like all of a sudden switch in James Harden's gameplay?
I just feel like James Harden just doesn't want to figure it out until he gets this guy Kyrie back in there. You know what I'm saying? It's weighing on his heart heavy. He wants his guys out there. And every time he's lacing them up, he's used to having his guy next to him, and his guy that's usually next to him isn't next to him, and it's throwing his game off. You know what I'm saying? So they got to be whole again, and we're gonna see a lot of things switching and sliding and shaking over on the net side until they get it figured out. You know, but like Trey said, everything Trey said was true. Rehabbing, you know what I'm saying? It's still early, you know. They still got to get in game shape, you know. It takes about I don't know. I never played in the NBA, but I would guess it takes about 2-3 weeks to get to proper game shape. So maybe that's, I don't know. But well, I don't know, man. I think he needs his boy Kyrie out there, man.
All right, Richie, same question. I'm curious to know how you feel about this kind of visible switch in James Harden, but also I want to go ahead and kick off so that we can get to the break, and we'll go back around the conversation about Kevin Durant, who already this season has had 2 ejections. One was last Friday. He threw a ball into the stands, and in this particular game that we've been mentioning, and I don't know that I'm going to get this name right, but he was matched up with Kelly
Olynyk.
How do you say it?
I think it's Olynyk.
Oh, I've got Olynyk or
Olynyk.
Olynyk. Okay, yeah.
Olynyk.
He got him with a John Bones Jones.
He gave him a good elbow.
Yeah, it was a good elbow, a little
right to
high,
the neck,
right across the temple, and that was I don't know. They haven't released the fine, but that was enough to get him ejected. The fine for the throwing the ball on Friday was $25,000. I've seen in the past, I know we've mentioned in the past that Kevin Durant has a reputation of being kind of robotic on the court and almost emotionless in some situations, and focused on the game. This is a little out of character, I would say. might expect this from a different player, but I'm curious to see what you think might be contributing to high emotions or whatever is causing this.
Well, that's the two-parter there.
Two-parter.
Okay, so here's what I'll say. Let me go back to the James Harden thing. I think, James Harden's just such a fantastic basketball player that we look at his statistics and go, wait a second, he's only scoring 18 points per game, right? So at the end of the day, he's almost got like 19 points per game, 8 assists, 8 rebounds, something like that. I mean, it's not, you're talking about 7 to 10 points. And again, that's a lot of points, but for a guy who's not in game shape and has said as such because he was told not to rehab. Now, I don't know why, but the team told him not to rehab during the offseason. I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to me, but he wouldn't randomly lie about this, in my opinion. So for whatever reason, they told him not to rehab in the offseason. So you're seeing him get back into game shape. So for a guy who's not in game shape to be going 18, 8, and 8, I don't think there's any reason to hit the panic button. As far as KD, I don't know, man. He's kind of a temperamental guy. I think between the two of them, he's probably the one taking like Kyrie's thing harder, and he's probably just frustrated, like because James ain't in game shape right now. He doesn't really have anyone to rely on. He's the type of guy that would get a little more testy and chippy, and I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing just kind of annoyed. Now, I'm not projecting on it like he's annoyed at Kyrie. I think he's just annoyed at the situation and not having one of the best scorers, in the NBA on his team, and the unknown of that and the status of that. I'm not going to get into the CEO and GM and all these other things that are happening in the media because we don't know what Kevin's thinking. The only thing I can say is Kevin is definitely a temperamental guy. I think we can all agree that. We've seen it throughout history, especially with the Warriors, and his frustration with fans, how easily that can affect him. But easily top 3 player in the league. It's bothering him clearly. I don't think this is a sign of things to come. I think he's going to settle down and he's just going to ball out like he always does, and everything's going to be fine. So they're, not a great start, but with James, out of shape, so to speak, and then Kyrie not playing, them being 8th, and again, on only 7 games, there's no panic button. It's not that big of a deal.
We did say this time and time again about a certain Kansas City Chiefs. No, I'm just kidding. Sahe, I think I messed up the order. We'll fix all this in the second half. What do you make of Kevin Durant's couple of moments in the sun? I guess is one way to say it.
Well, I like it. I love it. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, Kevin Durant's a robotic guy. Never really shows a lot of emotion out there on the court. So I like it. I think the league needs more of it. Maybe Kevin Durant needs to, get into a couple scuffles out on the court, change his image. Then you got Kyrie out there rebelling. You got James Harden not doing his rehab, lying on the training staff, telling them that they told him not to rehab when they were begging him, try to get him in there, but he just didn't want to do it. The Nets are the new bad boys of the NBA. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to win the NBA title, so they got to be famous for something. You know what I'm saying? They got to be famous for being the new bad boys. And it's from a bunch of guys you wouldn't expect it. It's coming from a guy who thought the earth was flat, a dude that got fat and demanded a trade and then got super skinny out of nowhere, and then a trader team hopper. You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't expect it out of these guys, but you could kind of see it all along that these guys are going to turn out to be the bad apples. And that's what I'm thinking we're seeing right now. So hopefully we see more of it, Kevin Durant getting a couple scuffles, maybe, throw the fade with a fan in the parking lot, see some TMZ news.
I hear Jake Paul's looking for a new fight.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? To then do like a little halftime thing, Kevin Durant versus Jake Paul. Let's go.
I mean, one thing I will say, Sahe, I agree with you. James Harden lost 40 pounds in like 5 days. I need to learn what diet that was.
Right.
I need to figure it out.
4 months to pull that out.
Yeah.
I heard he wasn't really fat. It was just a fat suit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Trey, I saw during that descent, I saw multiple head shakes. I'm going to turn it over to you.
I just don't understand where this robotic Kevin Durant comes from. Robotic, I mean, like Richie said, he's very temperamental. We're talking about someone who created fake burners, admitted to creating fake burner accounts on Twitter to respond to his own comment section. Like, this is the same guy we're talking about. We're talking about the guy. We're talking about the guy who openly goes at it to known basketball reporters and analysts. He went at it with Chris Broussard. He went at it with Stephen A. Smith. He's not robotic in any way. He's extremely emotional and extremely sensitive. Him getting technical fouls to get thrown out of games is common. I want to say he's been top 10 in the league the past 8 years. Like, this is Kevin Durant. The thing that he did with Kelly Olynyk, I didn't think that it was intentional, but it doesn't surprise me. Him getting tossed out of the game, him getting technical fouls doesn't surprise me. I'm sure, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm sure if it comes to technical foul, payout, Kevin Durant's top 5. He's sensitive. He might respond to me on this, and I'm just that's just how
Please
sensitive
do.
he is. That part, please do.
I've got the top 3 currently, if that'll do. I've got Trae Young, followed by Russell Westbrook. Trae Young, Joel Embiid, and then Russell Westbrook. These guys don't have KD in the top 10, but who are these guys? Are you ready watching and listening to The Wire? Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to talk about the NFL. We got to get into some big news in Tennessee, and then we've got the statistical favorites picks discussion that was previously mentioned, and so much more. You're watching The Wire. Don't go anywhere. The H2G Podcast, Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tune in to H2G to hear us talk about the real topics like the heartbeat law, social media, and more. The H2G Podcast, Season 7, every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome back to The Wire. We talked NBA to now. Time to move on to the NFL. We're going to get into the statistical favorites here in just a second, but breaking news as of Sunday, Derrick Henry, who was on pace for 504 touches, which would have broken the NFL record, is sadly, it's not looking too great for that record and for the rest of the season. King Henry went down with a foot injury that will and does require a potentially season-ending surgery in order to fix. Unless you guys have more info, that's all I have on the injury right now. All I could find was that he's going to need surgery. They don't know if it's going to be something he can come back from this season. We're going to kick things off with Sahe. Sahe, what does not having Derrick Henry mean for Tennessee?
Basically, they should just shut down the whole football facility, forfeit all their games, be like, all right, guys, that's it on the season. We're ending the season a little early this year, unexpected. We didn't foresee Derrick Henry going down. He does it all for us. But yeah, literally, that's what it means. Are they even going to make the playoffs this year? Should they be scouting draft picks early? They got a lot to think about because Derrick Henry was their guy. He makes the whole ship go. But they got Julio Jones for a reason. So now they're going to have to rely on Ryan Tannehill, a guy that's been getting a lot of praise down there in Tennessee. So now it's time for Tennessee, realistically, to see who they really are, see what they got back at their quarterback. And you know what I'm saying? It's really not the end of the road. They're still a good team. They just signed a beast of a guy down there. So it's going to be a lot tougher. But then again, I'll add this. It does make Tennessee a little bit more dangerous at the same time because you have to really have a lot of guesswork with what they're going to do now. It's not going to be, oh, we got to go in here and stop Derrick Henry and do something that nobody wants to do, and this is what we're going to have to do. They're going to have to game plan for different things. So it could potentially make them a little bit more dangerous, kind of like how Cleveland got better without Odell Beckham Jr. In the lineup, although, you know what I'm saying, it's not the same, but it could be. You know what I'm saying? It could be. Teams aren't going to know what to expect now, and it could make them a little bit more dangerous. But that's a huge blow. He was going to be the leading rusher. He was probably going to break the records, like I said, all the records as far as rushing goes. So they've got a lot to figure out. I can't wait to see what they do.
Richie, that is, in fact, not news that you want to get if you're anyone in management over in Tennessee, and especially not for Derrick or his family. Definitely send condolences there. Same question. I mean, what does this mean, not having Derrick Henry? What does this mean for Tennessee?
You know, before I get serious, I'm very disappointed this didn't happen 2 weeks ago when I was playing against Marvin, because Derrick Henry is the sole reason I lost that week. It's a bummer. You know, I love the position of running back, and I feel like in the last 10 years, it's dramatically been reduced in its role and what the scope of its value is. Ezekiel Elliott had to sit out to try to get some of that money because so often now, you know, Adrian Peterson, I believe in 2011, was the last, you know, MVP and the last time like a running back really got their due, so to speak. And Derrick Henry's been phenomenal, and people talk about Derrick Henry, but even though he's having like all-time historic Eric Dickerson type runs in years and seasons, he's still not getting the same accolades that Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and et cetera are having. You know, like when you look at Patrick Mahomes, which, you know, not saying anything bad about him, he's done fantastic. He's a fantastic quarterback. He's having a little bit of an off season, but the point is Derrick Henry has been that prolific at the running back position, and yet we don't hear nearly the same news about somebody like Derrick Henry. It's a crushing blow. Back to my fantasy, I'm hoping AJ Brown will get a lot more. I don't care about Julio. Give it to Brown. But yeah, as far as Tennessee goes, it's going to be hard for them. But again, let's be optimistic. To Sahe's point, they have Ryan Tannehill, they have Brown, and they picked up Julio. And Julio's honestly one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play football. So when you're giving Brown that opportunity to go single, you're giving Julio, and quite frankly, they haven't really had many opportunities because Derrick was on pace to touch it 500 times, and they're running the ball most of the season. So if this is Ryan Tannehill and I'm Julio Jones and I'm AJ Brown, not that I'm happy about this, but I'm looking at this as an opportunity to showcase my own talents and you know, get Tennessee into the playoffs and hope Derrick can come back by then. It's approximately 8 weeks. They're talking to Adrian Peterson, I believe, to kind of be that fill-in back. So who knows? Maybe the game plan changes. Mike Vrabel's honestly top 3 NFL coach, period. So if anyone's gonna be able to like turn around what they need to do, Mike Vrabel is very good at doing game planning, and he's one of the few Bill Belichick coaches I think has actually been successful. I know, Trey, you heard me, top 3, period.
Top 3.
You heard me, 3. Top 3.
This isn't technically a GOAT alert.
This is not a GOAT alert. This is top 3.
Mike Tomlin.
No,
Andy Reid, the Rams coach, the Ravens coach, and you're gonna say Vrabel is a top 3 coach.
Here's who I have better than him. Okay, I honestly would only say
Bill Belichick.
No, I'm not giving Bill Belichick any diss. Are you kidding me? No. The only season he didn't have Tom Brady, he went crap. This season, now he's using the excuse of, oh, well, I got a rookie quarter. There's excuse after excuse for him. Tom Brady carried that mofo. And if you look historically at all his assistant coaches, they all sucked, except for Vrabel, who wasn't a coach, it was his former player. All of his coaching tree has been terrible, whereas Andy Reid's, to your point, has been successful, because we're looking at the Packers and we're looking at the Rams and they're successful. But if Bill Belichick is this amazing coach, why is it that everyone under him has never been successful?
Okay, so take him away.
To take him away.
Top 3?
Yep, top 3. I'm
The
still sticking
coach
by it.
at the Bill. I mean, we can talk Andy Reid as a head coach.
I agree with you.
We can
Andy
talk
Reid has to be
Mike
the-
Tomlin. Mike Tomlin's a better coach than him. There's no way you could put Mike Tomlin below him. And then we can even take the coach for the Bills right now for what he's doing. I mean, I'm just saying that I feel like that was
Sean Payton. Sean Payton.
Sean Payton?
Sean
Oh, y'all crazy. Sean Payton?
We might not get to the last topic. So
I know, we might not get to the last
I didn't hear
topic.
Bruce
No.
once.
Sean Payton?
John Payton's a heck of a coach.
Is he great at scoring points?
He's just great. Look at what he's doing the last 2 years. He got Teddy Bridgewater paid. He made Taysom Hill look sweet.
Wait. Rewind.
Jameis Winston
What did I
checking
just
the ball
say?
down.
Is he great at offense or is he a great coach? I agree with you. He's the best offensive mind, significantly over Andy Reid. But if he's so great with all the talent he's ever had, how come he don't win?
They're in the playoffs every year.
Oh,
Every
okay.
year.
I thought it was to win
Yes,
championships.
we over Andy
He's
Reid.
got a. He's got a.
As an
Super
offensive
Bowl.
mind? Yeah, absolutely. As an offensive
Oh.
mind.
Significantly, Andy
I
Reid's
thought we were
one of the
talking
greatest
about the Clippers for a
offensive
second.
miles. Andy Reid's probably.
Yo, we gotta have a coaches conversation at this point.
We do.
Okay, no. Trey. If that's the case, we'll fact check this next week. But I guarantee you, Sean Payton's teams average more points than Andy Reid's teams career-wise. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. I'll put money on it. If you
All
want to
right.
put $50 on it, I full-heartedly
Oh my
believe
God.
Sean Payton,
Money on the
his
table.
team averages more points than Andy Reid's teams collectively over their careers. 1,000% I believe that. I could be wrong, and if I am, we'll find out next week. We'll look at the statistics. I don't have these numbers off the top of my head, but I truly believe Sean Payton's teams have averaged more points per game than Andy Reid. I don't disagree.
You can say that
Andy Reid
has been in the tougher divisions than Sean Payton. You can argue that.
Wow.
You could argue that, but when with offensive minds, it has nothing to do with division. It's how many points you
It
put up.
does. Absolutely. The defenses that he's had to face versus the defenses that Sean Payton has had to face has been completely different. And we're
I don't
talking
know.
about Andy Reid. Andy Reid's historically one of the greatest offensive minds in the
And so Sean Payton, I agree
He
with you
has
on Andy
been.
Reid, though. I'm
But
not
that's
disputing
still-
that. NFC
that's-
East, maybe
but
2001
Vrabel-
through 2006, man.
But to the original point, Vrabel as a top 3 coach is very and highly debatable.
Oh,
This is what
absolutely.
we're-
Hold on.
debatable.
Highly debatable is a very fair statement. I'm not disputing that. I'm just telling you, I would love to argue for him as number 3. He's clearly not 1 and 2. That's why I said top 3. I ain't ever gonna put him
Also
1
a
or 2.
decent podcast on the ESPN network. Check out Highly Debatable. We're just giving out free plugs.
Anyways, this is completely derailed based on one number that I put out. So let's
Also,
go
a good
back
coach,
to the
Urban Meyer. is
let's go
successful.
back to the scope of this conversation, right? If I'm Tannehill and I'm the wide receivers, I'm looking at this as an opportunity to showcase my talents, right? That's what we're discussing. So I believe this is a great opportunity for them. AJ Brown's have a heck of a career so far. Julio Jones is a GOAT. Honestly, probably a top 5 wide receiver of all time. When you look at his numbers and you look at the latter half of his career, the only guy that's even put up margins in similar categories is Jerry Rice. I mean, Julio does not get the respect he deserves. I've never understood why. And it's disappointing he had to leave Atlanta and come to Tennessee. But, I really want to see him have the opportunities again, because both of these guys have kind of been on the wayside due to King Henry's success this season specifically. So this is a great opportunity for them to show, and particularly Julio, I still got it, because Julio Jones still got it, and people forgot. It's crazy.
Trey, we'll absolutely open up a top 3 head coach discussion in the back half of
That'd be-
this episode. But in regards to this, I do want to know what you think. Derrick Henry being out possibly for the season, probably for the rest of the season, means for Tennessee. But in addition to that, before we close this discussion and move on, I also want to ask you: does this bring to light once again that it's kind of dangerous to base your entire offense. We've talked about this with Wentz, right? Base your offense off of one player. Is this once again kind of proving that point?
No. I mean, it's trying to find your identity, and it's basic smash mouth football. You run the ball, you control the clock. That's basically how they operated. And from off of that run, since you had to load the box with 8-9 guys, off of that play action pass, you had A.J. Brown and Julio Jones on the outside. With I think Julio Jones is having a hamstring issue right now. So A.J. Brown's going to get majority of those looks. But now that opens up the field, and they don't have to put 8-9 in the box. They can roll over coverage to A.J. Brown right now since Julio's out. And get him covered. So it really is how much has Tannehill learned as a quarterback, starting off as a receiver from I think where he started. And since he's been in the NFL, he had great moments and he's had some low lights. So it's gonna be real interesting to see where they end up without King Henry. I will say that the AFC playoff wise and for Super wise is wide open. It looks like honestly, the best team in the AFC right now, for looking at what they're doing right now, I would say is the Raiders and possibly the Bills, but really the Raiders. If we're going to take teams right now, if I had to put money on them right now, I would pick the Raiders. But that just shows you how wide open it is, because they're riding off of a very I don't say emotional, but a traumatic situation themselves by losing John Gruden due to his comments and his actions off the field. But I also feel like this may be, I heard someone say earlier, this may be a blessing in disguise. I think you mentioned he was going to get over 500 carries this year. Running backs don't come back off of that. Like, historically, period. Anybody you're going to give 400 plus carries in the season, their lifeline in the NFL decline right after that. And then they start having the knee problems. Then there's the ACL. So really, this foot problem, as iffy as it is, and as complicated as it is, foot problems are always complicated. You can always re-injure them. They're such small bones. They're such frail bones. Depending on how long it takes, he may have just given himself an additional 2 years in the league. I know we all are upset that he may have not beat the rushing record, but it might have been a blessing in disguise for Derrick Henry himself. And now Tennessee knows what they got as far as quarterback. Is he a game manager, or can he make the play? So it'll be very interesting, especially in the AFC, what happens next.
Absolutely. I had to look it up real quick. When you say coming back off of ACL, MCL injuries, there is one man who became a robot after he tore both at the University of Oklahoma. I believe that we're talking about the same Adrian Peterson.
He's not human. That doesn't count.
He's an alien. Yeah, absolutely. He tore both. I remember watching that play and came back faster by like 0.6 of a second or some crazy shit like that. Okay, let's expand off a discussion you guys had last week that I really enjoyed. If you want to enjoy that episode and you missed it, you can go to H2G Podcast on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, where all the audio podcasts are. Check out our previous episodes. We're going to dive into NFL statistical favorites. As Richie brought up at the end of last week's episode, we're going to start things off with the Offensive Player of the Year so far, obviously. Let's start with Richie, because this new rotation got me confused, so I will have to write it down next week. But we'll just go in the order I see everybody. Richie, who's your Offensive Player of the Year so far?
Well, this makes me very sad, because if we did this last week, I would have said Derrick Henry. And now I can't say Derrick Henry, because just to give him his props before I move on, Derrick Henry is at 937 yards. The next closest guy is Nick Chubb at 584. He's almost got double when you really think about that. That's absolutely insane compared to his own peers. Having said that, I mean, this is a tough one, because now we're looking at quarterbacks, and now it's kind of boring. I know Sahe's on here. Sahe, you better say Tom Brady. I don't want us both saying Tom Brady, so I'm gonna let you have Tom Brady. I'm going to say Matt Stafford. You know what? Why not? I'll say Matt Stafford with an honorable mention to Derek Carr. Derek Carr's played phenomenal, by the way. Phenomenal. But I'm going to give it to Matt Stafford. I feel like for a guy coming into a new system to compete like this, the only time I've ever seen it was Tom Brady last year. Matt Stafford is balling. He's 22-4, 22 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. And honestly, the bigger note to me is his sacks. He only has 7 sacks. You know, one of the things historically with this guy in Detroit was he'd hold on the ball and get sacked like 50 times a season. And that was where he'd get injured. And, you know, Marvin and I had those discussions. But having said that, he's reduced his sacks, reduced his interceptions, and maintained the passing that we're used to seeing, his touchdowns and his yardage. So to me, being on a new team, Derrick Henry excluded, obviously, I'm going to go with Matt Stafford on this. I think he's had a phenomenal year so far.
All right. Sahe, who do you have as offensive player of the year?
Yeah, like Richie said, obviously it's Tom Brady. But I'm not gonna go with Tom Brady here. I'm gonna go with my man Kyler Murray, man. Obviously he's got his team 7-0 or 8-0, whatever. They haven't lost. No, they have lost.
They just lost.
What am I thinking? But still, he's playing great. He was a guy that was on the fence of playing football. He was gonna go play basketball, and he said, "Wait, let me go over here and try the football." And it turns out he's actually great at the football. So far, 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, quarterback rating of 110. Okay, and that's phenomenal, man. 72 completion percentage. Come on now. He's playing highly efficient football. And him down there with Cliff Kingsbury, they're doing the thing down there, and they're looking pretty sweet, man.
Sahe coming in hot with the stats. Moving over to Trey.
First time in history. You know what I'm saying?
Trey, we're at offensive player of the year thus far, and you're on mute. Oh, there.
I think we've mentioned the top 3 quarterbacks in the league between Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, and Kyler Murray. And since Derrick Henry's down, it's got to be one of them. Right now, I think Tom Brady is leading them with like 2,600 yards or something like that, with touchdowns and interceptions. Right now, if we're looking at it right now, I'd have to be Tom Brady. I don't want to just give it to him. Kyler Murray's doing some things over there with the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals, pound for pound, probably have the best receiving core. And they could just move the ball. But numbers-wise, it's going to be Tom Brady right now. And honestly, I might take a different route. I might go Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is Matthew Stafford has Cooper Kupp looking like he's going to offense. He's about to break Megatron's record. If he can continue on this pace with the extra game, he might break Megatron's record. So I'm going to go with the quarterback play is going to be crazy with the extra game and how the game's spread out. It's been really amazing to see them fling the ball around. But what Cooper Kupp has done with the Rams this year, and that's with having Deshaun Jackson on the opposite side, I think that is pretty amazing. So I'm going to give the nod to him for offensive player of the year.
Hey, coming in unpredictable. We're gonna go in reverse order, back around the bend here. Trey, your defensive player of the year.
My defensive player of the year has to be right now my guy from the Cowboys, the DB. What's his name? He's got a brother in the league.
Trayvon Diggs.
Trayvon Diggs. My guy is a machine. If he can keep going at this pace, he deserves Defensive Player of the Year. If he can get 14 interceptions this year, he's Defensive Player of the Year. To me.
All right. Sahe, what about you, man? Who do you have as Defensive Player of the Year?
Man, defensive player of the year. I was going to give it to Trayvon Diggs because he's the only guy that I can think of that's just like going out there and making a huge difference in a team that was one of the worst defensive teams last year, especially in that secondary. But I'm going to be a homer on this one and shine a light on the guy that you guys might not know about. He's not in the stat sheets every week. You might not even know he's on the team. I'm going to go with Vita Vea, defensive lineman for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We've had the number one rush defense for 2 years in a row. All right. And we're well on our way to having the number one rush defense for a third year in a row. Why? It isn't because of Levante David. It isn't because of why is his name just leaving me right now? White. Man, I can't believe I'm leaving. I forget. Devin White. Yeah. It's because of Vita Vea. You know why we won the Super Bowl last year? It really wasn't because of Tom Brady. Although he's the greatest, it was that defense, because the defense was able to come together because teams weren't used to seeing us with Vita Vea on film. He came back from a season-ending injury at the after the Washington game. Washington gave us trouble on offense. Why we didn't have Vita Vea out there? He's probably the most dominant defensive tackle in the NFL. So you guys.
What did he just say?
Aaron Donald's a defensive tackle, Sahe.
Aaron Donald's a defensive tackle, man.
Aaron Donald plays defensive tackle, but he's listed as a defensive end. So.
No, he's listed as a defensive tackle, man. XU, he's a DT.
All right. Vita Vea is the most dominant defensive tackle in the NFL. I'll say it again.
What is going on? Is it retrograde? Is it retrograde? Because you guys are saying some off-the-wall stuff today. What is going on?
I mean, hey, Trey.
It's debatable, but we're talking Vita Vea
is greater and more dominant than Aaron Donald. Come on, man.
The most dominant defensive tackle. I didn't say the best.
Dominant.
I said the most dominant.
Ndamukong Suh is a defensive tackle.
There's a reason why we're going on. I laid out the stats for you guys. Number one in rushing 3 years in a row. 3 years in a row. That's because we got the most dominant force down there in the middle, plugging them holes. Running backs have nowhere to go, and we got.
Y'all just saw a defensive tackle. What's his name for the Saints? He got. What's his name? Not Will Smith. What's his name?
All right, I'm gonna go on mine. Wait, Vita Vea is Sahe's. We got it. All right. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and have an argument about that. You know, he knows his team. If he feels Vita Vea's impact is that large, I don't know about if it's better than Aaron Donald, but that's
look him up.
Here's what I'll say. All right. There's a lot of good players. You know I'm an Aaron Donald fanboy. You know for a fact I'm going to tell you the reality that they're leading the league in sacks because of this man, even though he's not getting them right now. Leonard Floyd is getting most of them. And now they're about to have Von Miller get some free ones. Their defense is 18th. So he has no business, even though I think he's the best defensive player, he certainly is not the defensive player of the year so far. In my opinion, it's Myles Garrett with the Cleveland Browns, them being the top 3 defense, number 3 currently in terms of yards and points allowed. So to me, Myles getting double and triple teamed, just like I talked about with Aaron Donald, leading the league with 10.5 sacks, getting cloned and having blood tests week after week after week. Myles Garrett is clearly, at least right now, the best defensive lineman. We can talk about Diggs and his incredible play so far. Quite frankly, 7 interceptions is crazy, but he does let a lot of big plays go past him, which is why for me, I'm always the guy. get to the quarterback, you win the game. So I'm gonna stick with Myles Garrett. I think Myles Garrett so far.
You know who disagrees with you, Richie? One Mason Rudolph over there in Pittsburgh on the bench. He disagrees that Myles Garrett is a good football player. No, just bad jokes all day from the sick guy. Let's go around one more, Richie, reverse order. We only got time for one. Let's do MVP of the year so far. If you had to give the MVP trophy out right now, who'd you give it to?
Okay, remember, this is me picking, not like who I think is going to win. If I'm picking, I'm giving it to Derek Carr. It's really that simple. That Vegas team, nobody had, as Trey pointed out, is possibly the best team in the AFC right now. You could not have been at the beginning of the season been like, Derek Carr is going to throw 12-5 for 2,400 yards. Like, that's just, I mean, maybe if you're a real Raiders homer, maybe. But Derek Carr has played phenomenally. The Vegas Raiders have, in my opinion, exceeded my expectations. And I would have never guessed they would have been the team leading the West in that moment. So to me, Derek Carr, it's that simple. Side note, we didn't really do rookies, but Jamar Chase is clearly going to win, so we don't need to talk about that. But Derek Carr, for sure, is my MVP of the season so far.
Jamar Chase also doesn't count because he too is an alien. Sahe, we're at the MVP of the year. If you had to give it to somebody today, who'd you give it to?
If I had to give it to somebody today, I'd give it to Dak Prescott. Because he's completely shown everybody why he wanted to get paid and why his contract situation was such a big deal for him, and he had to get the number he wanted because he's the man down there in Dallas, and he's got him firing on all cylinders.
One podcast host would agree that he's the second best man in Dallas. Trey, I'm just kidding. I'm not better than Dak Prescott on anything. Maybe podcasting. Trey, MVP of the year. If you had to hand it out today, who'd you give it to?
My MVP of the year is going to Lamar Jackson. He's lost his 3 top running backs. He's thrown for more yards than he has in the other season, and he can still get it done to play. Somehow he's got this team winning. And he doesn't like it's going to slow down. So my MVP will go to Lamar.
Yeah, I mean, who needs a running back when you are Lamar Jackson?
When you are the running back who throws the ball.
When you're in the top 10 rushing players of the year.
Top 10 rushing,
right,
you get up for 400 yards in a game.
Right. We missed biggest pleasant surprise and biggest disappointment. We might be able to squeeze that in somewhere next week. We're for sure going to talk top 3 head coaches because that is highly debatable. Another shout out. You've been watching and listening to The Wire. You're checking us out on the audio podcast. We know you're listening to us on one of them, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, one of those. We've been putting in the Q&A and the polls. If you can get involved with us there, we greatly appreciate it. We'd also like some reviews. Let us know how we're doing. If there's a different direction you'd like us to take, if you'd like to come on the show, there's something cool you can do. You can go to our Facebook and our YouTube page. Let us know in the comments, but also join our Patreon, folks. That's where all of our behind the scenes stuff is. You get into the studio roughly 3 to 5 minutes before we start recording most of the time. So that's all I've got. Anybody else got anything before we ring the bell on this Wednesday?
I also feel like we should talk about defensive tackles. I'm not going to mention Aaron Donald, but I really want Sahe to give me more information. And I believe him, but that's my point. Like, I am oblivious in my knowledge of Tampa Bay in that capacity. You know, to me, if I'm not going to go Aaron Donald, I would say like Fletcher Cox or Chris Jones or Cameron Hayward. So I'm curious to learn. Like he said, the vaunted like #1 rushing defense 3 years in a row. So Sahe can educate me a little more. So I would love to get into a conversation like that because that's what, you know, let's do it. It'd be great. Let's do it. Yeah, no, I mean it. Yeah, I'm dead. I don't want to sound facetious. I mean,
this is something people should know. Actually.
Yeah. No, I mean it. You know, it's a big part. Tampa Bay's success is their defense. And clearly there's parts I don't understand. So I would love to hear about it.
Earlier I was talking about Cam Jordan, but his defense is in.
Okay.
And having Tom Brady helps.
Yeah.
Maybe
Our
low.
second nigga trash. Anybody can
bit.
throw.
He alright. No
Yeah.
Tom Brady friendly. No Tom Brady friendly.
All right, so next week, you heard it here first. We're going to definitely get into the second half, defensive tackle conversation, as well as top 3 head coaches. If you got something else you want us to throw in there, let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you next Wednesday and every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern.